Good morning, Albuquerque. Thank you for joining this telephone town hall with Mayor Tim Keller. This is our 10th telephone town hall since March as we work to keep everyone updated in Albuquerque. For those of you who are wondering if you are connected, you are. Right now, you are in what is called listen-only mode, which means that you can hear me, but I cannot hear you. In just a moment, we will introduce Mayor Keller and other city leaders, and then we will open it up for questions. But first, let me go over a few housekeeping items. Today's event is also bilingual and being interpreted in real time into Spanish. If you'd like to listen in Spanish, press *0 on your phone. Again, to listen in Spanish, press *0 on your phone. It will take about 20 seconds to transfer, so please stay on the line. Por favor, presione la estrella y cero y será transferido al ayuntamiento en español. Spanish speakers are also encouraged to follow @Alcalde Keller on Twitter, see our COVID resources in Spanish on cabq.gov, or call 311 and ask for a Spanish speaker for any questions about city services. In any language, if you would like to ask a question, you can press *3 on your phone and you will be put into line to speak with one of our staff members. Again, to ask a question, please press *3 on your phone. Our staff will hop on, take down your name and question, and then return you to the town hall. Then, if you hear your name, you will be live to the entire conference and can ask your question directly to Mayor Keller and city officials. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. So please press *3 right now if you'd like to ask a question. Again, *3 to ask a question. Along with Mayor Keller, we also have a number of city leaders joining us today who can speak to some of the specific questions folks in Albuquerque have been asking. We have our Environmental Health Director, Ryan Mast, our Senior Affairs Director, Ana Sanchez, our Economic Development Director, Cynthia Jaramillo, our Interim Albuquerque Police Department Chief, Harold Medina, our Albuquerque Fire and Rescue Deputy Chief, Emily Jaramillo, and our Special Advisor on Education and Children, Sasha Pellerin. Now, I would like to turn the conversation over to Mayor Tim Keller for some initial remarks. Mayor?
Well, good morning, Albuquerque. This is Mayor Tim Keller, and I want to start by thanking all of you for taking the time to join us today. I think we all know how difficult these times have been for us, whether it's COVID rules or virtual and hybrid schools, trying to figure out work and also trying to take care of ourselves. And as difficult as the last 7 months have been, I do know we can't let corona fatigue undo all of the hard work that we've put in to slow the spread and really keep our community safe and healthy. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen a spike in positive cases, but it's not too late to gain control of this virus and do what we need to do. So I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about that in the Q&A. Things you can do, of course, are wearing a mask, washing your hands frequently and properly, avoiding large gatherings, and staying at home when you can. And as a city, we've got to do all the work we can, and we will, to provide a safety net for our community as we continue to look through what the future is during these uncertain times. And so we want to keep everything open and running that we can, but we know it will probably be different, and we all have to continue to adapt. So we will continue at the city to also adapting to provide childcare for working families, push construction projects forward to keep our economy running and improve our city, to work with our partners to care for our homeless population, to check in on seniors and help provide meals for them, support our local businesses and micro businesses, and to fill gaps that are created or highlighted by the coronavirus. And we also believe that over time, we are doing a job that reflects the true nature of our city and that will actually attract businesses and people who want to live in a healthier, more diverse community. So I think with that, we're going to get to our questions. And just as a reminder, because we're having real-time translation, we are pausing occasionally and speaking a little bit slower so that translation comes through loud and clear. So with that, let's try some questions.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to everyone who is participating with us for today's town hall. If you'd like to listen in Spanish, press *0 on your phone. Por favor, presione la estrella y cero y será transferido al ayuntamiento en español. If you're just joining us and you'd like to ask Mayor Keller and our city officials a question, you can press *3 on your phone. Again, press *3 on your phone and you'll be connected with our staff to ask a question. Mayor, I don't think it's any surprise that we're seeing lots of questions on the same topic. So why don't we start off by, if you can tell us what's the latest on COVID-19 here in Albuquerque? What are we seeing?
Well, in terms of COVID, and this is Mayor Tim Keller, by the way, for our translators, I'm supposed to always announce my name. And so this is Mayor Tim. And so when it comes to the latest on COVID, you know, as hopefully folks have heard, the last 3 weeks have been very, very tough. Our rolling average, our positivity rate, our hospitalizations have basically all doubled statewide. And they are at the highest levels that we've seen since this started. Now, at the city, we are going to be significantly ramping up enforcement, and we're going to be focusing on high-risk areas, big box stores, retail stores, and social gathering places. Unfortunately, things like sports bars and so forth. Some of the data points to that being a significant concern. Even certain large gatherings, right? Any large gathering is still a very unsafe activity, even if it's outside and is not allowed under the state public health order. Now, in terms of hospitals, 2 out of 3 of our hospitals are at 100% capacity, but they do have surge capacity. So we are in a position where we can provide those beds, but we know that, you know, we are pushing up against very difficult decisions that we don't want to have to make in terms of who gets those beds. I also want to share that it's not something we always want to hear, but we are at risk of having closures and things of this nature if we can't get the spread under control. Now, I'm very confident that we can all work together to slow the spread by following basic COVID practices. Wearing a mask absolutely is important. Washing your hands, avoiding large gatherings, and staying home when you can is all very, very helpful. And as we go into things like Halloween and the holidays, Thanksgiving, it's really important also, I think, to understand what we can do and realize that there are ways to hang out with family and friends and be able to enjoy things that we like to do. The key is knowing how to do them differently, whether it's in smaller groups or whether it's outside or wearing a mask. That's what's really important. And so it really does fall upon us to take responsibility for when and how we do a lot of things and doing them in a way that's safe and healthy. So there's probably going to be more questions on this, so I'll stop there and we'll see what folks would like to hear about.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Again, if you're just joining us, you can press *3 on your phone to ask Mayor Keller a question, and you'll be connected with our staff. Again, *3 to ask a question. And if you'd like to listen in Spanish, you can press *0, and it will take about 20 seconds to transfer, so please stay on the line. Por favor, presione la estrella y 0, transferido al ayuntamiento en español. All right, Mayor. We're going to take our first question live. And our first question comes from Bobby. And Bobby has a question about local nonprofits. Bobby, go right ahead. You're on the line.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. How you doing today?
Good to hear from you, Bobby.
Yeah, it's nice hearing from you, too. My question for you is about nonprofits. How are you going to help nonprofits, through this pandemic, with PPE and stuff, since funding is down low and everything is going down the drain with these nonprofits? I'm in one myself called A Better Way of Living Incorporated, and they're like kind of suffering, for PPE and stuff.
All right, thanks, Bobby, and a great question. We do have a couple of very significant programs that are within days of being available. And so let me give an overview, and then our Director of Economic Development, Cynthia Jaramillo, can speak a little bit to this and maybe give some phone numbers or websites on where to get more details. But basically, we've got over 1 million masks on order and ready to come out, along with tens of thousands of other PPE, and we're distributing them to those organizations that need them. And this program is, I think it's about ready to start doing deliveries next week. And so certainly if anyone needs that assistance, Cynthia can guide folks on how to do that. The second aspect is we are looking at another round of financial assistance that hopefully will be able to include a variety of organizations. And that also should you'll be able to apply for that in probably less than 10 days. So I think help is on the way. Cynthia, what else would you add to that?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is Cynthia Jaramillo, the Director of Economic Development. And I would like to add that nonprofits are not in this alone. Mayor mentioned that PPE will be available to nonprofits and small businesses come early next week. Those that are interested in obtaining PPE can contact my department directly at 505-768-3730, or for more information, you could visit our website at www.cabq.gov/economic development.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Jaramillo. Again, to ask a question, please press *3 on your phone. Next, we're going to take a question from Steve. And Steve has a question about speeding. Steve, go ahead. You're on the line.
Good morning, Mayor. Tim Keller. I got a question for you about speeding. I live on the Westgate side of Albuquerque, and Westgate, like in the Westgate area. We have a bad problem pretty much around the city of Albuquerque with street racers. I've called 911 several times. I've written you emails pertaining to this problem. But right on Sage between Coors and 98th Street, from morning till night, all you do is have kids racing up and down that road. That speed limit on that road is 30 miles an hour. Those kids are doing at least 80, 90 miles an hour up and down that road, racing all damn night. It's getting to be pretty frustrating, and I know it's going to be a bad problem around the city as well. And I want to know what you guys are going to do to address that. Not to mention the exhaust on those cars. Last time I've checked, the allowable decibel limit is 92 to 94 decibels. That's equivalent to a mild stock exhaust from a factory or equivalent to a motorcycle. These cars are running wide open exhaust.
Thank you, Steve. I think we got most of that in there. And this is a challenge we are having all over the city. And it has, I think those of us, I was born and raised here, and we've always had, cruising down Montgomery and Central. And I want to emphasize that what Steve is bringing up is different. We have seen since Corona a racing, sort of youth activity desire spike. And so this is a challenge. Thank you for and I do get the reports about up on Westgate, but we see it also on Montgomery. We see it on Central. We see it out by the Balloon Fiesta. We're seeing it on Lead and Coal, and it's been a real problem. So what I want to do is, we're fortunate to have Chief Harold Medina on the phone with us, and so I want to let him really speak to sort of how we're looking at this. But I just want to emphasize that this has gotten much, much worse, and so it is something that we're just trying to deal with. And lastly, before I hand it over, on the decimal level piece, you are absolutely right, and there hasn't been an enforcement mechanism of any kind on that for decades. And our legal team is looking in terms of how we can work on that. It's obviously very difficult unless you catch people like in the act, then you can actually have some enforcement. But we're trying to understand, like, through the dealers who put these on cars or things like that, if there might be something we could do. So we're aware of it and we are working on it, but it's been real tough during COVID. Chief Medina, why don't you go ahead?
Hello, Steve. This is Chief Medina, and thank you for the great question. And it's just fortunate that we actually had a very long conversation on this topic this morning with a few city councilors, our traffic section, and the deputy chief who oversees our traffic section. And there are some ideas that we've been working on over the past few months. It seems that this is a citywide problem. It is a very large problem, and all of our commanders are being affected by these street racers in one way or another. We've had a series of enforcement operations, and we've given a lot of citations, but the frustration to the officers is that every time it seems we get going in one part of town, they just shift location and they move to another part of town. So what we're trying to do right now is, earlier this week, we asked the traffic section to develop a calendar for us, because we know when we put enforcement out on some streets, like we said, people will slow down for a period of time or they'll move. So we're trying to make a rotating calendar that hits some of these key areas so that we could enforce some of these speeding complaints. The other thing we're doing in terms of the noise, that's one of the big issues that's coming up, is we've actually asked our traffic section to reach out and to see if we could get some assistance from environmental health in enforcing some of these noise violations, and maybe a joint operation together where they can help us document this and get this into the court system and cite some of those individuals who are involved in that. Our traffic section is much smaller than it was years ago, and we need to grow our traffic section in order to really be able to address our traffic complaints. And traffic complaints are probably the biggest complaint that we get in the city. I'm happy to say that we have approximately about, I think we're at like 38 cadets in the APD Academy with an additional 19 at CNM. And we're hoping to have a large class of over 50 in the spring at APD and an additional group at CNM. And it's those recruiting efforts that are going to get us staffed to the level where we could grow our traffic section and add a late swing traffic section that deals with the afternoon traffic crashes, which would clear up our officers and their calls for and give them the ability to go to calls for service and address a lot of this late evening drag racing that's occurring. But in the meantime, until we get to those staffing levels that we are working on, we're working with our traffic section. We're adjusting their hours, and we will continue to enforce the laws through good proactive police work. The only frustration for our officers and the community is this is just something that we will continue to have to do, and we're actually working on a media campaign to help educate the community and educate parents on what's occurring with these drag racings. So we have a process in place that's going to have some strong enforcement components, some educational components, and our staffing plan and our recruiting efforts hopefully will give us more resources that help us address the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Mayor. Again, *3 if you'd like to ask a question. *3 on your phone, and you'll be connected with our staff. Next up, Mayor, we have a question from one of our Spanish-speaking listeners, and it comes from Gabriela. And Gabriela wants to know that as mayor, will you continue to respect the governor's orders and keep children home from school, and is just curious about sort of the future of schooling in general right now?
Well, thank you so much for that question, Gabriela. And, you know, I'm an APS parent, and of course, APS is not doing any in-person learning, I think, other than maybe some special needs situations. So I think first it's important to note that that's actually APS's choice. It's actually not the governor or myself. The APS school board is the one who makes that decision. And so the answer to your question really lies with APS. And I do know, of course, with COVID rates what they are, I wouldn't expect any change in one way or another for APS anytime soon. I think the real question is, what about next semester? You know, I think at the end of the day, that's probably where we're at. I will also say that, you know, for those folks who are in a private school or Catholic school and in the parochial system, they are given the choice right now by the state. And I know in Albuquerque, many of them are open. And the governor currently has stated she's going to continue to allow that. She did mention that that could change in the future. And so, you know, from my end, I look at this. I mean, I spend a couple hours every morning online with my daughter and son. And, you know, it's I think just difficult for everyone. It just is what it is. It's hard on students. It's really hard on parents. And I know it's really hard on teachers. And so we'll just continue to see where APS wants to go in the future. But I will mention we continue as a city to offer care for children at our community centers for those parents that have to work. And we're just letting parents decide. We're not saying you're essential or you're not, but if you feel that you need to go to work and there has to be a place for your child, our community centers are doing a great job accommodating thousands of children in our city. And depending on their age and so forth too, they're supporting online learning. Our community centers certainly do not actually do any teaching or anything official, but they are making best efforts to help kids log in if they bring their iPad and so forth. And so that's part of us keeping the safety net open for parents who do have to work.
Thank you, Mayor. And as a reminder, you can press *3 on your phone to ask a question, star 3 to be connected with our staff to ask a question. Next up, Mayor, we're going to take a question from Jim. And Jim has a question about out-of-state visitors. Jim, go right ahead. You're on the line.
Hi, Mayor. Thanks so much for taking my call. I just want to make a really quick comment on the street racers. I have them here on Montgomery and Eubank area where I live as well. It's always after midnight, and the thing for me is those cars never have any license plates. You can't identify who they are. Just a quick comment on that. I have COVID-19, and I contracted it 3 weeks ago when I went into a gas station in my area here, the cashier, they were both young people. I'm in my 50s. They were about in their 20s. Came in with a young woman to the second cash register. I was already paying for my transaction, and they were talking, didn't have any masks on, and it kind of freaked me out. I couldn't do anything because I was already paying, and they kept talking. And then 3 days later, as I was watching the debates, I started feeling the symptoms. And the thing I remember about that young woman, though, she kept saying she was from California, they just got there, so on, so forth. My question is, Mayor, for folks that are coming from out of state, California, Oregon, is there some way to have them register so that they know what the laws of the city and the state are and make sure that they're complying with these laws? Otherwise, it seems like, as I've seen so many people just going around without masks, spreading this disease. I got it myself. I'm in the healthcare field, by the way, and it's very risky. So I wonder if anyone's thought of anything like that.
Well, Jim, thanks for sharing your story, and great to hear you. You sound great. So, I think hopefully you're on the road to recovery, and I'm really glad you called in and shared this with us. So a couple of aspects that I'll speak to, and then our environmental health director, Ryan Mast, might add in some other comments. First, just on speeding, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are all these tricks, and they're using that license plate that's covered up with like the clear plastic, but you can't really read it at night. So just empathizing with that point, it has been very difficult to crack down on this. But to speak about the core of your question. So number one, I dream about somehow like raising bridges and barricades and like trying to keep, everyone out who, is not following the rules. However, obviously much of that is not legal or appropriate. And so the question is sort of, what can we do, legally and just from the, concept that we have a lot of people passing through, but we also, have friends and family who may be from out of state and so forth. So anyway, number one, of course, we want to encourage everyone to follow the rules and the quarantine rules. But we are, I think, going to take some much bigger enforcement steps. So in your example, that business would actually be held accountable for letting them in. They should have never been allowed in the store without a mask. And we have to do a better job, and we're going to start this weekend holding businesses accountable. You just can't do it. It's against the emergency order. And so that's one aspect. And, obviously they can offer them a mask. That's also one way to do it. Another thing we are going to start doing is checking for in-state identification at public buildings. So things like libraries and so forth. There are tax-funded resources locally, and we're just not going to allow you in if you're not a resident here. So those are, I think, two big changes that we're making. And I would encourage people, because of enforcement, call it in to 311. We want to know every business that is not enforcing the mask and the distancing and the occupancy rules, because we have in sort of lowercase cross-deputized our fire department, environmental health, code enforcement, so that we can now try and really hold businesses accountable just to follow the law. And those that are should be rewarded and frequented. But those that aren't, we've got to know about it, and we can actually do something about it. So please call that in to 311. Ryan, what else would you add?
Thank you, Mayor, and Jim, thank you for that question. Yeah, my name is Ryan Mass. I'm the Director of the Environmental Health Department. I really appreciate the story that you shared, Jim, because it really illustrates a lot of the challenges that we're seeing, not only in the city or in the state, but also nationwide in the recent spike in cases. What we're experiencing here is actually right in line with what we're seeing in many parts of the nation as people have increased their travel. We're seeing now additional gatherings occurring, and realistically, we are anticipating more of this to come in the coming months as the weather turns to being colder, people move indoors more, there are holiday season where folks also naturally travel more. And so it's really important right now for all of us to be very diligent about our own behaviors in reducing risk, just as much as we are encouraging others to also be safe. The mayor highlighted a lot of those measures that we can take, that we do have control over, such as wearing masks in public and avoiding going out in public wherever possible, and also washing your hands. I would also say that these things will also be important as we head into flu season to mitigating that. Some specific things for travelers to remember is we are in contact with the State Department of Tourism and our partners at the Department of Health to get the message out to folks who are coming in, registering through Airbnb and other short-term rentals, as well as the hotels. And they are also helping us support getting the message to folks coming in to the city. Keep in mind that not everyone that comes or passes through the city of Albuquerque may stay at one of those locations. And so it is a challenge to helping, inform every person who comes into the city of Albuquerque. But we are going to continue to push those messages out to anyone coming into the States, especially as the rules change here locally, in addition to continuing to do the enforcement actions that the mayor alluded to that we know are just so critical to keeping the public safe as we head into a potentially higher case total season. Alan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Director. Again, *3 on your phone to ask a question. You'll be connected with our staff. Next, we're going to take a question from Al. And Al has a question about policing in the southeast part of our city. Al, go right ahead.
Yeah, we were promised about 2 or 3 years ago that there was going to be a police substation built in the southeast corner of San Mateo and Catherine. Is that still planned or what? The lot is completely empty there.
Thanks, Al. The couple of things on this. That was a great idea, and I still like it. The issue is there was never money, ever. So, we still have that aspect of the problem. But here's the plan. Number one, the department felt that the Phil Chacon station was also very important. And so in the short term, just to help the neighborhood, we are expanding that, which has been needed for decades. And then what we're going to try and do is build out that whole track that is empty on San Mateo. And it'll include some specialty public safety units that deal with homelessness perhaps, or even that deal with different addiction and narcotics. And hopefully too, we'll have some paramedic units there too who deal with down and outs. So the idea is it'll kind of be a multi-use public safety facility. And I think we're also looking at some public housing there. But I want to emphasize, as was the case before, there is no money yet set aside to actually do that project. But I'm going to be asking council and the voters in the next GO bond cycle to fully fund that project. So I hope if I'm here long enough for another term, I think we can get it done. But just telling you straight up, so I think the plans are good and they're still in place. But from day one, that project just didn't have any funding set aside. So stay tuned for the GO bond election, and we'll get our chance to actually fund it and then get it built. And in the meantime, we'll be able to stage a lot more folks out of Phil Chacon after some much-needed renovations.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, *3 on your phone to ask a question. Next, Mayor, I'm going to summarize a few questions we're seeing here about how the city is helping seniors. If you can elaborate on that a little bit, please.
Sure. So in terms of seniors, we're doing a number of things, and we have a wonderful department that is reinventing our senior services during COVID. And the director of that department is with us today. So I think it's best, Anna, why don't you go through what all we're doing for seniors. Anna Sanchez is the director of our Senior Affairs Department.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is Anna Sanchez. I have the privilege and pleasure of being the director for the Department of Senior Affairs. Certainly during this time of the pandemic, we've really been focusing on our essential services. We want to make sure our seniors are safe. They are most vulnerable during this pandemic time. Focusing really on our meal service. Continuing to offer our services. We are still offering transportation for folks that need to get to their medical appointments. Our home services, making sure that folks have some services that are available to them, such as home chores, doing yard cleanup for our seniors in our community. Those are all still going on. To be able to find out of all of our services, the best way is to call our Senior Information and Assistance line at 505-764-6400. To date, we have provided more than 430,000 meals to seniors in our community. And to really break that down, out of our 5 pick-up-and-go lunch meal sites that are all available on our website, we have provided 220,000 meals, as well as 208,000 home-delivered meals. So we have our folks from our Department of Senior Affairs that are taking meals directly to the doors of seniors who may be still a little afraid or might not have meal service available to them. We are also pivoting many of the things that we're doing. We are passing out activities such as puzzles and playing cards. We are offering drive-through friendship coffees to get folks out if they can be able to come to our facilities and get a pastry and a cup of coffee. But the cool part that I think that we've really worked hard and our staff has worked hard on is offering virtual programming. We have a variety of stretching and exercise classes that people can find online through YouTube, through Facebook, and we recently launched Virtual Bingo, which was one of the most enjoyed events that our folks used to have here at our facilities. And then, of course, utilizing our GOV-16 channel, we are offering daytime dancing with the Department of Senior Affairs. So we are available. We are thinking outside of the box. We are available for resources, support, companionship by phone. We want folks to contact us at our 505-764-6400 number because we are there for them during this time and hope everyone continues to stay safe.
Great, thank you very much. Again, a reminder to press *3 on your phone with a question. Next, we're going to take a question from Melissa. And Melissa has a question about how we're handling different COVID hotspots. Go right ahead, Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm so happy you're doing this, and I hope since we're in an emergency, this will happen weekly. I've been following the data I'm a retired teacher, so I like to go into detail. So I've been following the data since May 1st, all the way through yesterday. I've got the data on cases every day from 87102, which is where I live, all the way through 87123. I realize there are some zip codes that I haven't followed the data, but I've also looked at San Juan, McKinley, Doña Ana, Sandoval, Lee, Curry, and Chavez. And the question I have is, you can see from the data and from the zip codes, and I realize some zip codes have a higher population than others, but you can see some very high cases. And I'm just wondering what the city, first of all, are you keeping the data by zip codes? Can you get that data out to the public so that people that live in that zip code will know, wow, it's growing. We need to be wearing masks. We need to be social distancing. Or can you also go out and focus enforcement in those zip codes?
Thank you, Melissa. And your question is so timely because we are announcing much of this in about an hour. So a couple of items to touch on. Number one, we are tracking zip code data. And in fact, in our briefing today, we're going to go over zip code data. And you can find all our data in one place. You'll love it, cabq.gov/COVID. And the zip code data, as you know, does show some fascinating patterns. We're seemingly having a lot more problems on the west side. And there also, though, just because you love data, you have to also consider things like where nursing homes are. Those tend to drive up the rates in certain zip codes. And, other different situations where there might be like outbreaks. So just something to remember with zip code data. Sometimes it can be very skewed by a large nursing home, for example. But we are announcing today that we will be adjusting enforcement based on the zip code data. So we actually are going to be doing what you suggested. And also, in terms of awareness and so forth, we are going back to, as you suggested, our weekly COVID updates. And so typically they're on 11:30 on Tuesday. Because of the governor's announcement yesterday, we're now doing ours today. And so it's at 1:15 today. And you can watch that on Government TV, Channel 16. You can also watch it on Facebook and on Twitter and YouTube. And so we're going to be doing this as long as the numbers continue to be what they are every week. And we're going back to sprinkling in our telephone town halls like this one, and also some social media town halls people appreciate as well, where they can ask questions. So you may recall we did that, for like 6 months, but we stopped when things went down in August and September. So we will be back doing that, keeping everyone informed as best that we can. And so stay tuned on those. And I think also, as I mentioned, absolutely we're concerned about these specific hotspot areas. And we're going to do our best to make sure that it's not because of enforcement, right? So we will be adding enforcement to areas where they need it most.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor. Next, we're going to take another question from our Spanish-speaking listeners. And we have a question from Esperanza about early education. She's an educator, and she's concerned about funds for early education with kids staying at home and wondering how we're assisting or how we're able to assist with access to early education.
Great question, and we have one of our experts from the city available to speak to this. And I would just say that if for the city facilities, we are, I think, still the largest early childhood provider in the state. And the city facilities, we have gone through extensive lengths to make them safe and COVID appropriate. And so we are committed to keeping those running. But for more on that and the bigger picture beyond city facilities, I'll turn it over to Sasha Pellerin, our Senior Advisor for Early Education and Youth Programs.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Sasha Pellerin. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor in Education. And thank you so much for the question. This is definitely something that's very important to us, thinking about early childhood education all the way through college. Aside from city facilities that have been up and functioning throughout the pandemic to ensure that families have a safe place to send their kiddos, the city is doing two other things I think that are worth mentioning now. We're working with the private child care facilities across the city to kind of figure out how to create more options for families who are in need of services, which I think is one really amazing partnership that has started to bear some fruit. And then the other thing, if we're just thinking about peer access to information and resources, we have an online system or an online app. It's the yc.cabq.gov. And if you go there, there's online resources all the way from, early learning all the way through high school. And so those are two. One is definitely short term with the online stuff, and then working with private child care centers and continuing to run our facilities is something that we're doing. And then we're also looking at long-term solutions and what that will look like as we move into hybrid, hopefully, and eventually back to normal pace.
Great. Thank you very much, Sasha. We are coming towards the end of our event. We're going to try to get to as many questions as possible. *3 to be connected with our staff to ask a question, and you will be able to leave a voicemail with your questions at the end of the call if we didn't get to it. Next up, Mayor, we're going to go to Derek. And Derek has a question about downtown Albuquerque. Derek, go right ahead.
Hello, Mayor, and thank you for taking our questions. I had just a quick comment that, in regards to street racing, as an avid enthusiast myself, there's not a lot in the city that we do that's sanctioned by the city, like car meets and everything. It might be nice to see that a little bit more moving ahead. However, my question is, as a facility manager in the downtown area of a COVID-closed business, I'm constantly looking ahead for better ways to secure my building, as well as preparing for any future threats. As the presidential election looms, is there any reason to believe there may be protests? And if so, what will be done to keep those protests peaceful?
Thanks, Derek, for that question and for your commitment to downtown. A couple of things about motor racing. With my young kids, I've kind of been noticing this a little bit. And, there is, I think it's called like Sandia Motor Speedway, but it's out on the west side. And they actually do some really great things for folks of all ages and things like that. And so it's a very family-friendly racing venue that just want to mention that we have. And we do have the drag racing strip out at Mesa del Sol. I'd have to check and see, what kind of things are happening during COVID. But interestingly, our city in the last 10 years has actually ramped up on sort of our sanctioned appropriate racing venues. So I'll take that just as a little bit of a homework item to find out if they're open and doing programming and things like that. Now, to your question about elections, look, all across the country, I think everyone is preparing for what could be a very unrestful election night and perhaps weeks after the election. And I will say that we do know that the propensity for unrest isn't even correlated to who wins. In other words, no matter who wins, I think there's a high propensity. And the worst situation is if, things are unknown for several days or even weeks. So this is a serious concern. I have been in communication with hundreds of mayors around the country on this, and we're meeting weekly, actually, through the Conference of Mayors to go through how each city is preparing for this. So I would say that we're preparing as best that we can, but there are so many uncertainties. We just don't know what type of unrest or where unrest would occur. So I'll create a little bit of space for our chief of police to speak to this as well. But I think the most important thing to know is that we are anticipating it and we are preparing as best that we can. But, there's a lot of unknowns. So there's no way we can be for sure about anything. So Chief Medina, what else would you like to add to that?
Thank you, Mayor. This is Chief Medina, and I just would like to add that we are working to prepare, and we're actually already began that process where we have monitoring in place, and we have a plan in place that actually goes through the inauguration in January. We have a lot of key dates on there where we're going to be monitoring to see how things go, and particularly on Election Day and the days after, we've closed our vacation books to make sure that we have as many officers available as possible in case there's any kind of civil unrest. We also will have our real-time crime center manned by myself, all the other deputy chiefs for the entire election day. We also have representatives from the DA's office and the Attorney General's office that will be there with us in case there's any type of enforcement or prosecution type questions that we have. So we have a plan in place, and we're hoping that things go as peaceful as possible. But I have to agree with the mayor that I think that no matter what the outcome is, there's going to be some type of incident that we will have to address, and hopefully we could address it as peaceful as possible. And we'll have to just wait and see what the future brings. But we have made modifications to how we're going to be responding to calls and addressing issues right around Election Day and the days after. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. And Mayor, knowing we're running short on time here, we're going to do one more question that I'll summarize that we're seeing a few of here. A lot of cities have had COVID outbreaks amongst the homeless population, and ours has luckily stayed a little bit lower than most cities. But what are we doing to help homeless people stay safe right now?
Alan, let's just check. It might have briefly cut out, or are we on standby for another question?
Oh, sure. It might have cut out for a second there. Just our last question here is a summary of some of the questions we're seeing. Many cities have had outbreaks amongst the homeless population, and folks want to know how we are assisting our homeless population and preventing transmission.
Got it. Thank you. There's a number of things to talk about around this, and so let me touch on a few areas. And also we have Deputy Chief Jaramillo on the phone from our Fire Rescue Department that might also add some commentary. So firstly, we anticipated outbreaks in our homeless population back in March, and I appointed a medical director, so a doctor, to actually be at our West Side shelter. And also we started doing testing out there very early, April or May. And the estimates that were provided is we expected about 600 homeless folks to come down with COVID. And we were just so blessed that until about a month ago, we had very few, less than 10. And obviously we finally had our first outbreak, and with roughly 100 people testing positive. So what we have is followed the protocol that we have in place. So what we did is we had to close it to new folks, so no one new was exposed. and then they went through a decompression process where folks are spread out in hotels all over town and in different locations. And so now we're in that compression 2-week period. And hopefully when we'll be done with that, much like you see happening with football teams and things, then we can go back to operating it. But because of the outbreak, obviously this has put a couple of hundred people out on the street. And so unfortunately, until our city builds this gateway center that I've been advocating for and that the voters funded, we are going to continue to have these problems of homelessness. Now, we can do an update on that at some other time, but we have some new ideas that we're working on to do that. But, no neighborhood has wanted this in their neighborhood, and I understand that. I absolutely do. But I know our city has to build this. Homelessness will not get better until we build the Gateway Center. And so I'll continue to keep pushing for that, but also I need council's help to get that done. So again, this is a large topic, so I'll try and keep it short, and in our next town hall we can go into this more. But I would mention this: we have a lot of providers who at least are still up and running, a lot of nonprofits who help with the homeless community, Healthcare for the Homeless, Heading Home, HopeWorks, The Rock, and that is a very important thing. So we're hoping to, again, use all our COVID-safe protocols to make sure that those nonprofits can keep running, because if they can't, we're going to have, obviously even more people on the street. But let me end my part by just saying this. As tough as it's been in Albuquerque, we are in a much better place than other cities. And so it doesn't mean that we don't have to do all the things I just mentioned. But I am grateful that our homeless providers, our partners, and our department, the fact that we have only had the outbreaks that we've had puts us in the top tier compared to any major city in America. And so I do think our folks are doing the best job they can and demonstrating that we can do things a little bit better in Albuquerque. But it's a tough situation. Deputy Chief Jaramillo, would you want to add anything else on top of that?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you really covered that very well. I think from our perspective, seeing the city work with all of the service providers in the community to really work together for a solution has really put us a step ahead of a lot of other communities. Something specific that Albuquerque Fire has done just to assist is we partnered with Department of Health and assist with COVID testing, and then also with our persons experiencing homelessness. Another big push that we did last year and will likely continue this year is ensuring that all of our homeless population has access to flu shots, so which is really crucial during COVID. So those are ways that we're trying to also assist and do our part with all of that. But other than that, you really covered everything else very well.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. And Mayor, we'll hand it back to you for some closing remarks.
Well, I want to thank everyone again for joining this call today and for bringing such thoughtful questions to the conversation. And I also want to thank our interpreters who are on with us today, helping us reach our Spanish-speaking community. And you can find more resources on multiple languages, including Spanish, at cabq.gov, or just call 311. I want to wrap things up, I think, with a couple of reminders. First, early voting is open, and so for all things making a difference and change, now is our chance, and you can find information at burncovotes.org. Second, as DC Jaramillo mentioned, it's flu season, and we really want everyone to get a flu shot. And we have flu shot clinics all over town, and there's information available about what insurance they'll take and so forth, all at cabq.gov/flu. And there's even a great map. You can just look sort of what's near your house. But it's very important this year that everyone gets a flu shot, really to keep our health system free to be able to deal with COVID. Now, if you didn't get your questions answered today, please call 311 and just ask them your question. And for everyone out there, I think let's keep up the work to slow the spread of corona and keep our community safe and healthy, and to make sure that our businesses can stay open. I know we can get through this together. We have done, compared to other cities, a very, very good job. But we still have to be vigilant, and especially with all these rates going up, we have to be extra planful as we're going into winter and the holidays. So we will be in touch again once a week on briefing on social media and government TV and YouTube, and also throughout the month, digital town hall and telephone town hall. So stay tuned, and we hope to see you virtually at some point in the future.
Thank you, Mayor, and to all of our City of Albuquerque officials who joined us today to provide key information. And thank you to everyone who participated in today's bilingual telephone town hall. You can visit cabq.gov for the latest information or call 311. If you'd like to leave a message for the mayor or we didn't get to your question, please remain on the line and you can leave a voicemail in just a moment. This concludes the telephone town hall. Thank you.